Within each social situation, there is always a room for maneuver, and this is evident from the different approaches of different teachers to similar teaching context. Greetings, everyone. My name is Mtembeni Luna. I am starting with this phrase first because this is what we talked about on Monday with Dr. Shoba in our first lecture. She was asking if there is a room to maneuver given the social dynamics and social ills that are happening in our society. Also, in ECDS704, I think we also discussed something similar where we were asked to list some of the social illnesses that may prevent us from enacting the curriculum and teaching the kids. So these authors are saying there's always a room to maneuver. Okay, so in trying to make us understand agency, the authors used different case studies or teachers in their case studies and subjects as well to make it more practical so that we may understand. I know it may sound like welele inganekwane, but please let's take these case studies, listen and see where are they going with this. So the first one was Gerald, and the focus was on technology, his previous experiences, education, and exam. So let's take a look at Gerald's history and see how it's going to lead us, or how is he using his teacher agency to enact curriculum and teach kids. Okay, so Gerald, after school, he took a short course and worked after in motor mechanics for 12 years. Then went to do engineering degree and worked as electronic engineer, volunteered, and then he developed love for pedagogy, and then he went to teaching school as well. So already we see where is this going, as they are taking us back from his experience first, and then we see where it's going as they are telling us that he then developed love for pedagogy. So, as much as Gerald had life experience, but he was a new teacher, that means he had completed his teaching course. Now he is a new teacher with his experience, but as a teacher, he's still new. So, my question to you is, how do you think he would use, or he will use, his experience in now teaching the kids? Any ideas of how he might cooperate those together? Anyway, moving forward, as he is working now for this academy, they are telling us that the academy itself had rules or structures, but there was still some sort of autonomy, meaning teachers had that gap of freedom to enact curriculum the way they seemed fit. Then Gerald indeed used his previous experience to identify dangers in the contextualized teaching, especially in mathematics and technology. So this means maybe he saw that there were gaps from what was happening in the real world and what was being taught in the school. Maybe kids were being taught trigonometry that is no longer relevant to what is happening in the field. Remember, he's got experience. So now that experience, he is applying it directly in the classroom because he's seeing that no, man, there are gaps between what is done in the school and what is done in the real world. So what he did was to collaborate. Remember, he's from the technology department. So he collaborated with other departments. Together, they developed teaching strategies, and then they supported those that were lacking or who didn't understand the new strategies that they were now using or in discussion. So the school, this shows that his context was also supportive to what he wanted to do, and he came with ideas, and then they discussed together as different departments within the school. They supported each other, and they also did peer assessments to see, oh, so and so is kind of lacking here, because the article tells us that they used those who had experience maybe in curriculum development as well. So he was smart enough to involve other people, not to just say, oh, I've got experience in this, therefore I'll just go for it. But he was able to bring other departments and other people to discuss. He's bringing his expertise, others are bringing their expertise in curriculum development. Remember, he's a new teacher. So they did peer assessments and inter-department reports. There's a part as well that says they involved English department as well, so that the reports would be in English. So somehow, maybe he wasn't an English speaker, so he needed their support as well. Also, the school had rules, remember, as much as there's a room to maneuver, but there's still school policies. There's top-down approach, if I may say as well, because there's someone who's above someone else who has to account for something. Therefore, as much as they were changing things, they also had to make sure that whatever changes they're doing, they're still within the school policies and rules. So Gerald and his colleagues were driven by curriculum for excellence rather than the management policy. As you know, that whenever the curriculum is changing, there's always an agenda behind the bigger picture. There's always a bigger picture that, oh, this is what we should be doing, this is what we want to achieve policy wise. And as you know, like with Bantu education and our South African history, that obviously there were agendas behind whatever that was happening. Remember, Doctor said Gashekazi, obviously when they're planning curriculum and then you invite a private sector and then ubaba unesisikhulu from Shakers Checkers uzofika naye abeka ama-ideas wakhe. Why? Because they want the packers. So there is always management policy behind. But with them, they were driven or by curriculum excellence. And Ujerald also noted that there were conflicts and gaps between teaching, student learning, and observation. So before he was a teacher, what he observed, what he was taught was a bit different from now the actual teaching. The enacted curriculum was different from the planned curriculum. There were gaps and differences there. And also that a teacher agency kind of is, what's the word? Maybe is directed, or you can achieve teacher agents based on a context of Giona as well. So in concluding Gerald's story, he criticized the one size fit all teaching strategy that was being used and saw AMA students as individuals. Hence, he changed, or he wanted the department to get together and come up with new teaching strategies. His lessons were more practical rather than rushing syllabus to finish. Well, we know that sometimes teachers do that not because they want to, but because they are being rushed as well. There's so much to cover in certain time. And then he saw what he described as crime of teaching for exam. He didn't like that as much as he did, and he actually said it was predictable. The exam was predictable every year, so he actually did that. But he didn't like that, as he called crime of teaching for exam. To only teach kids that, oh, this is what is gonna be on the exam, so you should write 1 and 2. Hence, his classes were more practical. Also, the authors noted that as much as there are constraints that are undermining the possibilities for achieving a teacher agency, it does suggest that there's still some sort of room to maneuver and you can also achieve the agency, of which Gerald in this case he achieved Gakulugas because of his previous experience. It helped him before becoming a teacher. The second example or case study they used was of biology and two teachers, Debbie and Donald, with Donald using the lead from the front approach, so he called it, which incorporated didactic methods, demonstrations, use of PowerPoint, but with no practical work. So didactic methods, those are teaching methods that are just more scientific or direct or instructional, that you just tell the kids, do this 1, 2, and 3. Even if you're demonstrating, but you're still the one who is telling the kids. It's more teacher-centered approach, kind of. You telling the kids what to do, how to do it, spoon-fed, kind of. So Donald created booklets for students. He did PPTs with answers for questions in the booklet taken from past question papers. So he was doing what Gerald was saying is the whatever teach for exam. So he was teaching kids exactly what they should know for the exam. Okay. Whereas Dave became in later to as a substitute teacher because Donald was in an accident. So Dave became to substitute Donald. So Debbie's first lesson revolved around practical work activities, and they are done in groups, which was about DNA, extracting DNA from a kiwi fruit. Debbie asked questions without giving answers to the kids. She would write the problem on the board while going around making sure the kids are understanding and if they were able to do it. She reminded students that they needed to write the steps of whatever problem that was so that would help them in exam because even if the answer is incorrect but you still get marks for the steps. But that she did without actually doing it for them. She was encouraging them, and then she did formative assessment, peer assessment, used various visual aids as well. So Debbie's philosophy was one of divergent learning, as she was just opening up possibilities for kids to learn through the structured experiences. She was also promoting thinking skills and dialogue. She wasn't just spoon feeding the kids, but she believed that students had innate potential. So she was just asking provocative questions so that kids would answer and think as she believed that they had the potential to do so. Okay, so my question to you once again, forgive me, I'm a teacher. My question again to you is what from lenganekwane lekade siyixoxa, what conclusions can you draw now from these case studies or these three teachers? What are you getting so far from these three teachers? Are there any things that they're doing similar, differently? Are you getting how they used maybe teacher agencies? Did they achieve teacher agency even? To what extent do you think they achieved teacher agency? Okay, so the others here, as they are concluding or going towards the conclusion, here they are actually noting the importance of experience, how the teachers used their experience, their previous experience or experiences before becoming teachers in terms of enacting the curriculum and how they taught their kids in the classroom. Because Debbie as well also had a rich experience in the field and in the life sciences of biology field, just as Gerald also had experience in technology and other stuff, mechanics. So they are saying two out of the three teachers in the case study were greatly concerned with the provision of curriculum that was educational as opposed to instrumental. Okay, wena usuzochaza-ke what's the difference between lama curriculum that is educational and instrumental. So as they're saying two out of three, are you getting an idea which two of those three and why are you saying it's these two? Is it Debbie and Gerald? Is it Debbie and Donald? And why? Okay, let's finish off. So Gerald and Debbie saw education, or they thought education should not be narrowed or narrowly focused on exam. Agency here is viewed as the possibilities for different forms of action available for or to teachers at particular point in time. Agency is the ability to act. Teachers are also seen as agents of change. And then decades of educational policy have sought to impose change in schools. Of course, as we know, whenever there's change or there's a new curriculum, obviously there will be changes in schools. Like Doctor is always making examples of how curriculum like 2005 was just imposed on them, and they didn't even know how to teach some of the things and how to assess it. As she usually says, the will cool. So those policy changes always impose changes at school as well. Teacher agency, the authors are saying it's under theorized, and usually it's viewed solely as a positive capacity. So that this means teacher agents sometimes is not always positive. It can be otherwise. I don't want to say negative. For example, remember, as Betty, teacher agency is the ability to act. Kungenzeka ukuthi when your beliefs are kind of against whatever that is happening. This is something we've discussed. For example, mina ngiwasemakhaya and I'm teaching LO. So LO, I have to teach ingane mhlambe ezina 13 years already about sex and stuff, and I'm against that. How can I teach that then? Or I'm like indoda umZulu, I cannot condone by gay and stuff. So now being told that, oh, I have to teach kids that we are equal in the society, we are living with LGBTQI communities as well. How am I supposed to teach that to kids? You see, so because of where I'm from, in Deganjalo. And then they are posing a question. Okay, so that means agency is not always positive. I can also act, but in a negative sense, if I may say. So the authors are also asking, to what extent can teachers achieve agency? I think this has been popping up as well. Okay, it's lights of Zena. So, as they asked the question previously, to what extent can teachers achieve agency? Now, they also give an answer that agency can be achieved, or it varies based on context to context. Kunama environmental factors or conditions. There are also personal attributes to this, ama beliefs, ama values, ukuthi ukuphi as uthisha. So all those factors can then kube yiwona ashoyo ukuthi to what extent can you achieve the agency. Remember, like Gerald, his school was permissive ukuthi anga-acta to a certain degree. Your school might not be. So to what extent it varies from context to context. And again, remember the first statement I started with, within each social situation, there is always a room to maneuver. And this is evident from what we've just discussed, these three case studies. For example, Udebi and Donald, they were teaching the same thing in the same school, same class, but they did that differently. So usuyabona ukuthi it is, or there is always a room. You can achieve to a certain extent, of course, but you can always achieve the agency. Thank you.